Oda just revealed the most broken Zoan god fruit in One Piece. And it's an actual devil.
What?
Luffy's embodiment of sun god Nika is about to be challenged by Imu's devil god fruit. The parallel between the two is coming full circles, with chapter 1085 confirming so much. From number 1, Imu D Judas's age. Number 2, the first ever mythical Zoan devil fruit. And number 3, Vivi is a D. You know what I mean. She has a D in her name.
I don't know. I think that's a bit dodgy, mate.
We jump into the throne room with Imu-sama sitting on top of the empty seat. And for the first time in history, Oda decides to let him talk.
Hell, it's about time.
We saw chapter 1084 end with Imu showing up after the name Lily was dropped by Cobra, who was the queen and ancestor of Vivi 800 years ago. Imu says that she has 2 things to discuss with Cobra, with 1 question that she has to ask. And just like us, Cobra is shocked that Oda has finally decided to drop some lore. Instead of at the end of the chapter, Imu has appeared at the start. An important thing to note is that Imu is addressing themselves in 3rd person as Mu. Now this is quite interesting, as Mu means nothing in Japanese. This could be a hint at Imu's ability, as having a devil fruit with the power of nothing would be in direct opposition to Luffy's fruit of imagination, which can bring everything and anything into reality. But the title of Mu also makes sense for a king who should not exist. Cobra then cuts Imu off, exclaiming that he has heard this name before, that this name was amongst the first 20 kings of the allied nation. However, before he could get any further, Imu tells him to shut the hell up. Cobra doesn't have enough clout to talk about these things. But Imu does answer the question we all were asking for gosh damn 25 years. Like, what does the D mean? And as we predicted, using up deep future sight, it's of course the enemy of Imu and the allied kingdom 800 years ago. Now this automatically means that the D's are in fact those associated with the ancient kingdom, which was destroyed by the current world government. And as we pointed time and time again, it's not a particular family or race, but a crew who followed Joy Boy. This explains how a giant like Saul, or a doctor from the north and then a pirate from the east are somehow all related. Either or, Imu explains how due to time, the D's of the present have no idea about the meanings behind their names. However, they still exist and have been related to various incidents in the recent years. This is all due to Queen Lily's great blunder from 800 years ago. Imu had perfectly betrayed Joy Boy using Zenisha, and everything went as planned. But to secure their control over the masses, the events of the past needed to be completely erased. If Lily had not made a mistake on that day, then the poneglyphs, which holds the key to the past, would not have been available to study. This tells us that Lily was responsible for scattering the poneglyphs all around the world. Now I doubt she actually moved them all by herself, like they weigh a ton. And even if she used the devil fruit power like Kuma's pawpaw fruit, Imu's initial thought was Lily might have just made a mistake. Unless sending a huge amount of giant stones through space can be done by accident, I'm sure that Lily must have just done something inconspicuous. But all of this so far has proved that Imu is in fact from 800 years ago and had gone through the immortality surgery to live this long. The Chekhov's gun on the Ope Ope no Mi's power has been fired, and the community's theory on Imu being from Joy Boy's era is now confirmed. This inherently also explains the giant straw hat locked up in Imu's basement, as we learned that Joy Boy's devil fruit had the ability to stretch anything and all things around, effectively caused this giant straw hat to even exist. This would mean our theory about how Haki can affect a devil fruit is actually confirmed. If you think about it, Luffy can also stretch things out and keep it that way if he imbues his Haki into it, similarly to how a black blade works. Likewise, if Joy Boy had this power, it could be possible that Long Ring Long Land Island had also a similar treatment done as well. But chapter 1085 clarified why Imu stabbed Vivi's picture along with the others. shadows. This was because her ancestor had single-handedly messed up Imu's perfect plan. Lily was said to have gone missing and did not come back to Alabasta. A first look at this would make us think that the world government and Imu had her killed. However, Imu until now was uncertain if she even plotted against them. This is shown as Imu questions if Lily's actions were done deliberately, which pushes him to ask Cobra what was the name of the letter's sender left by the previous queen, effectively asking what was Lily's full name. Imu is saying that the answer to her betrayal lies in the poneglyph she left in Alabasta. But before Cobra reveals what was in the letter, he wants to double check with the Gorosei if he is 100% dead or 110% dead.
Oh, he did!
Gorosei readied the weapons, telling him that the moment he saw Imu, he was destined to die. So Cobra is like, screw it, and reveals the biggest twist yet. Lily's real name was actually Nefetari D. Lily. Imu is shocked by this revelation and exclaims, "Nani? D?" This confirmed all the doubts that were running through Imu's mind. 1,000 years of anger emits out of them, sending a black shadow arrow flying behind Cobra to stab him through the back. This unexpected attack signifies the pain of Lily's betrayal to Imu, but also represents Imu's own character to pounce from behind the shadows and into the backs of his enemies. This arrow also looks very similar to a devil's tail, primarily from the ones we see in cartoons. In Norse mythology, dragons were often depicted with arrow-shaped tails, signifying their strength and power. However, in the midst of this shocking moment, Sabo, who was hiding behind a pillar, jumps into action, shooting fire at the Gorosei, and then finishes off with a direct attack towards Imu. But Imu transforms into a giant creature with a huge mouth and sharp teeth, making Sabo's flames disappear with a bite. This ability to take in fire could be another piece of evidence of Imu's power being nothingness, erasing it from existence. Similar to Blackbeard's, but he nullifies devil fruit powers and absorbs real things instead of making them disappear. As Imu climbs down the throne, the Gorosei also transforms into Zoan monsters. The elder with the long beard turns into a bird-like creature, or perhaps a mythical bird called Garuda from Hinduism, or again something more aligned to ancient Egypt, as this monster could be inspired from the Egyptian deity Ra. The big bold Gorosei morphs into an elephant boar-like creature, but to me all I see is a hippo, which again would align to the Egyptian deity Taveret. Saturn J. Garcia becomes a demon like Oni, or bull with big horns, which if you continue the ancient Egyptian theme, it would be the deity Apis. The Gandhi Gorosei seems to have awakening clouds around his neck, referring to Mahis. Finally, the blonde Gorosei, yeah, he's just a blob. Now, these transformation sequence confirms that the Gorosei and Imu are indeed monsters with devil fruits, or perhaps even god fruits. This is reinforced with Sabo's own comment on how he never thought that the higher ups would be this hellish looking. Well, leaving aside the inspiration from Egyptian deities, we also have to remember how Oda has purposely imposed Norse, Roman and Greek mythology within these characters. If Imu god fruit is not based on Amun, a primordial deity king, then we have to come back to Hel, the goddess who rules over the underworld. Her name actually means hidden, which relates back to Imu, who too stays hidden. This also follows the notion of Hades, the king of hell. The underworld also represents Marijoa, as we see pompous tyrants ruling over slaves, along with it being at the highest peak of the world, where in contrast, Fishman Island is the lowest peak of the world, representing the heavens, whose king Neptune is a just ruler. This parallel reminds us of how the world of One Piece is currently upside down, and Imu's rule is unnatural, which comes back to the idea of his devil fruit being the original devil, which Mother Sea hates. This would also mean that Imu's Zoan is indeed a primordial deity, like Luffy's Zoan being Nika. However, in Imu's case, it's not a god, but it's an actual devil king hiding in the shadows. And as the saying goes, the greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he didn't exist, just like Imu. Either way, it's now confirmed that the Gorosei and Imu don't need any admirals or holy knights Knights to come to their rescue. In fact, it's more likely that their strength surpasses them, as they are the last line of defense for Imu and Marijoa. This reveal also means that Saint J. Garcia Saturn is going to be big trouble for the Straw Hats, as he's making his way to Egghead alongside Kizaru. So I doubt Luffy is actually going to fight them, rather it's going to be more like a chase. Anyways, with Cobra injured on the ground, we also find out how big news Morgan was able to get a picture of Sabo standing next to his body, as it was at this moment when a transponder snail snapped a picture of them. This brings us the question on how much does Morgan really know? Of course, he purposely decided to print Luffy's Yonko bounty poster using a restricted photo of his Nika form, but the key thing to note is that this was after the events we are witnessing now. Overhearing how the D's are emus and the government's enemy, Morgan must have realized this was a great opportunity to push the world into chaos. In the end, Morgan is all about gaining clicks, and as a journalist, one thing he will not stand is the manipulation of information by anyone but him. Moving on, Sabo grabs Cobra and tries to escape the throne room, whilst Imu tries to catch them. On the run, Cobra tells Sabo to inform Vivi and Luffy that the Nefetaris are part of the D clan as well, which makes Sabo enter a flashback of his own, remembering his comment to Ace and Luffy regarding the D initials when they were kids. Ace then gives him a D of his own, calling Sabo Saw-D-Bo. Now, Ace giving Sabo the initials could be just kids doing what kids do, but his name low-key sounds like Sadbo or Sad Boy, the opposite of Joy Boy. It's also quite interesting that Luffy and the Straw Hats know about Joy Boy and his promise, while Sabo or Sad Boy is learning everything about Joy Boy's enemy, Imu-sama. This cannot be coincidence. Through Luffy and the Straw Hats, we are bound to learn more about Joy Boy in his own perspective. Let's not forget about the ancient robot which tried to climb the red line present in Egghead. We might learn about Joy Boy, the ancient kingdom, and the entire puzzle of the Void Century, which will be solved when the story Sabo learned and the story Luffy learns are pieced together. Furthermore, with Vivi sharing the D and being Lily's descendant, the reason for Imu's anger could be explained through Vivi's story in the present. Vivi masqueraded and joined Crocodile's organization, climbing the ladder to be trusted by him enough to become Miss Wednesday. She did this in order to protect her kingdom. So what if Lily, mirroring her descendant, infiltrated the 20 kings and Imu, only to betray them and let the poneglyphs spread through the world for a new dawn to come? Which brings us back to the chapter as Cobra starts to recite Lily's letter, protect the poneglyph. Yep, Oda just blue balled us once again. We only get to hear the end of the letter because the Gorosei are screaming so loud that it activates Corazon's devil fruit, causing us to go deaf. But seriously, the end of the letter says that hoist the flags that heralds the world's eventual dawn. Now this sounds very familiar, as it's also something that Toki spoke of in her prophecy, which ends with the line, you shall know the brilliance of the dawn. Both the letter and Toki's poem declares the coming of the dawn, which could be a hint that Toki knew Lily 800 years ago, or their prophecies came from the same source, as Lily knows it will happen as a prophecy by using the word eventual. This source may have been Madame Shirley's ancestor, as the ancient kingdom along with Joy Boy were very close to the fish people. After finishing his speech, Cobra flings himself in front of Imu's attack to let Sabo escape, which insta-kills him. But Sabo runs away in the nick of time. We then see there is another spy peeping through a hole? Warphole! I mean, gosh dang, do they not have observation hockey? What's going on? But Warphole is shitting himself whilst eating through the walls to run away, as, you know, he shouldn't have seen any of this. Since he was only looking through a tiny hole in the wall though, Imu and the Gorosei didn't notice him. Now, I know a lot of you might be calling the Gorosei and Imu frauds for not even able to catch Warphole or Sabo. Like, it's a 6 vs 1 against Sabo. If they're so powerful, they should have easily been able to get rid of him, right? But listen, Warphole obviously has observation killing, and Sabo is pretty nimble. But seriously, they can't just go outside with the full Zoan forms. They're supposed to be hidden, and Imu isn't even meant to exist, so they can't risk going outside of the room. But whilst all of this is going on, Vivi is captured by the CP0 in the room next door. Lucci, Jabra, and Khalifa are all revealed to be CP0 agents as they recap everything that has happened in Marijoa so far. Turns out, after slapping up St. Charlos, Sai and Leo declared themselves himself as pirates of the Straw Hats Grand Fleet. And Fujitora has been turning a blind eye, helping slaves escape with the revolutionaries. This leads to a small brawl between Greenbull and Fujitora, which I can understand. Suddenly, Wapol eats his way into the room with Vivi, which distracts CP0, giving Vivi the opportunity to grab onto him and escape. And we know that they were saved by Big News Morgan, who scooped them up to get a hot story. With Wapol having the knowledge of everything from Imu to the D family being the enemies of the 20 kingdoms, the whole world will know about this secret once Morgan decides to print this news. And with the strength of the government already weakening through the 8 Kingdom Revolution, more nations around the world will likely start revolting after learning that it's not a joint effort that rules the world with no king, but there is someone on the empty throne controlling everything in the world from the background for 800 years. But if you want to learn more about this hidden king, click this video next as we break down everything you need to know about Imu-sama.